The night was quiet on Station Harmony. The stars outside the large windows looked like tiny diamonds scattered across black cloth. Most people were sleeping in their beds, dreaming of distant planets and peaceful tomorrows. But not everyone could sleep. Tiho sat alone at his desk in the refugee center. He was a tall man with tired eyes and gentle hands. 3 years ago, he had been a starship engineer with a beautiful wife named Yuna and a little daughter who loved to laugh. Now he was just a man who helped lost souls find their way to safety. The accident had taken everything from him. One moment, his family was there. The next moment, they were gone. Sometimes he still heard his daughter's voice calling him Appa in his dreams. Sometimes he still reached for Yuna's hand in the middle of the night, only to find cold, empty sheets. He worked the night shift because he could not bear to be alone in his small apartment. At least here he felt useful. At least here the pain was a little quieter. His computer screen glowed softly as he processed refugee applications. A family of blue-skinned traders from the Outer Rim, a group of workers fleeing a mining disaster, an elderly couple seeking medical care. Each story was sad in its own way. Each person carried their own burden of loss. Tiho understood loss. He carried it with him every single day. The alarm on his screen beeped. An unscheduled ship was requesting emergency docking. Tiho frowned and checked the registry. The ship had no identification marks, no name, no origin listed. This was unusual. He pressed the communication button. Unidentified vessel, please state your purpose and origin. There was a long pause. Then a woman's voice came through, soft and afraid. Please, we need to speak with someone. It is urgent, a matter of life and death. Tiho hesitated. Protocol said he should refuse, but something in the woman's voice made him stop. She sounded desperate. She sounded scared. Docking Bay 7, he said finally. I will meet you there. He grabbed his jacket and walked through the empty hallways. His footsteps echoed on the metal floor. The station was so quiet at this hour. It felt like he was the only person alive in the universe. When he reached the docking bay, the ship had already landed. It was small and sleek, painted in colors of deep purple and silver. Tiho recognized the design. It was Ishari. The Ishari were a proud and ancient species who ruled a vast empire across dozens of star systems. They rarely came to human stations. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss. A figure emerged, wrapped in a dark cloak. As she stepped into the light, Tiho could see she was Ishari. Her skin was the color of dark copper and her eyes were pure black like polished stones. She was beautiful in the way that statues are beautiful, cold and perfect. But she was not alone. In her arms she carried a small bundle wrapped in pale cloth. The bundle was moving slightly. Are you in charge here? The woman asked. Her voice was the same one from the communication. I am the night supervisor, Tiho replied. How can I help you? The woman looked around nervously, as if she expected someone to jump out of the shadows. I am a handmaiden of the Imperial Palace. I serve the Empress Nevia herself. What I am about to tell you must never leave this station. Tiho nodded slowly. I understand. The woman took a deep breath. 6 cycles ago, the Empress gave birth to a daughter. The child was meant to be the pride of our empire, the future of our bloodline. She paused, and her voice became bitter. But the child was born wrong. Wrong? Tiho asked. The woman pulled back the cloth from the bundle in her arms. Tiho looked down and saw a small face. It was a child, maybe the equivalent of a 5 or 6-year-old human girl. Her skin was pale white, almost like snow. Her eyes were soft blue instead of black. Her features were slightly uneven, with one ear higher than the other and gentle ridges along her temples. The child looked up at Tiho with those blue eyes. She was trembling with fear. Her tiny hands gripped the cloth around her like it was the only safe thing in the universe. In our culture, beauty is everything, the handmaiden continued. Black eyes, dark skin, perfect symmetry. This child has none of these things. The Empress declared her cursed, an embarrassment to the royal blood. Tiho felt something cold settle in his chest. What does the Empress want? The child cannot be killed. That would be too great a scandal if discovered, but she also cannot exist. The Empress has ordered me to take her far away and leave her somewhere she will never be found. The handmaiden's voice cracked slightly. I was supposed to leave her on a dead moon, to let her starve in the dark. Tiho stared at the child. She was so small, so helpless. Her blue eyes were filled with confusion and terror. She did not understand what was happening. She only knew that she was afraid. But I could not do it, the handmaiden whispered. I could not leave a child to die alone, so I came here, to the humans. I have heard that your kind takes in strays, that you care for those who have nowhere else to go. Tiho knelt down slowly so he was at eye level with the child. She flinched back, expecting pain, but Tiho just looked at her gently. He saw her pale skin and thought it looked like moonlight. He saw her blue eyes and thought they looked like the sky above his home planet on a summer day. He saw her uneven features and thought she looked like a normal little girl who was very, very scared. He did not see ugly, he did not see cursed, he saw a child. What is her name? He asked softly. Vela, the handmaiden replied. Princess Vela of the Ashari Empire, though that title means nothing now. Tiho reached out his hand slowly, carefully, the way you might approach a frightened animal. Vela watched him with wide eyes. Her small body was tense, ready to run. Hello, Vela, Tiho said in his gentlest voice. My name is Tiho. Are you hungry? Vela did not answer, but something in her eyes shifted slightly. A tiny spark of hope quickly hidden. The handmaiden stepped forward urgently. Someone must take her. If you refuse, I will have to find another place, another station, and if I cannot find anyone. She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Tiho looked at the trembling child. He thought of his own daughter, lost forever. He thought of the empty apartment waiting for him. He thought of all the lonely nights ahead. And then, without really understanding why, he said the words that would change everything. I will take her. The handmaiden's eyes widened. You, a human, you would raise an Ashari child. I would raise a child who needs a home, Tiho replied simply. Before the handmaiden could respond, Tiho gently took Vela into his arms. She was lighter than he expected and cold, as if she had been stored in a freezer. Her small body was stiff with fear. It is done then, the handmaiden said quickly. I must leave before anyone notices I am gone. The Empress must never know where the child went. She pulled a small data chip from her pocket and pressed it into Tiho's hand. This contains information about Ashari children, what they eat, what they need. Use it well. And then she was gone, hurrying back to her ship. Within minutes, the vessel lifted off and disappeared into the darkness of space. Tiho stood alone in the docking bay, holding a child who had been thrown away by her own mother. A child who had been called ugly and cursed by her own people. Vela looked up at him. Her blue eyes were still full of fear, but there was something else there too, a question. It is okay, Tiho whispered. You are safe now. He did not know if she understood him. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. He only knew that he was holding a little girl who needed someone to love her. And maybe, just maybe, he needed someone to love too. As he carried her back through the quiet hallways, Vela's tiny hand reached up and gripped his sleeve. She held on tight, as if afraid he would disappear. Tiho looked down at her and made a silent promise. He would not disappear, he would stay. For the first time in 3 years, the emptiness in his heart felt a little less empty. The first week was the hardest thing Tiho had ever done. Vela did not speak, not a single word. She sat in the corner of his small apartment, wrapped in a blanket, watching him with those large blue eyes. Whenever he came too close, she would press herself against the wall like she was trying to disappear into it. She ate only when he was not looking. Tiho would leave food on a plate near her corner and walk away. When he came back, the plate would be empty, but she would never eat in front of him. It was like she was afraid the food would be taken away if she showed any weakness. At night, she did not sleep in the bed he prepared for her. Instead, she curled up under it, hiding in the darkness like a small animal. Tiho would lie awake listening to her soft breathing, wondering what kind of life she had lived before. What had they done to make her so afraid? He made many mistakes in those early days. He tried to give her warm food, not knowing that Ashari children preferred their meals cold. She refused to eat for 2 days before he figured it out. He kept the apartment at normal human temperature, not understanding that she needed cooler air. She developed a fever, and he had to rush her to the medical center in the middle of the night. The doctors were confused at first, never having treated an Ashari child before, but they figured it out eventually. She needed the cold. He tried to hold her hand once to comfort her. She screamed and ran into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. She stayed there for 6 hours before finally coming out. Tiho was not a perfect father. He was not even sure he knew how to be a father anymore. His own daughter had been human, had understood human things, had laughed at human jokes. Vela was something completely different, a mystery wrapped in pale skin and silent fear. But he did not give up. His neighbor Sara noticed his struggle. She was a kind woman in her 40s who worked at the station school. She had raised 3 children of her own and had seen many different families come through the refugee center. "You look terrible," she said one morning when she found Tiho sitting outside his door, exhausted and confused. "When did you last sleep properly?" "I do not remember," Tiho admitted. Sora sat down next to him. "Tell me about the child." So he told her everything: the mysterious ship, the handmaiden's words, the little girl who had been thrown away like garbage by her own mother because she was born different. Sora listened quietly. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "You have taken on a great responsibility," she said, "but you cannot do this alone. Let me help you." Together, they studied the data chip the handmaiden had left behind. They learned about Ashari biology, Ashari culture, Ashari child development. The information was limited, but it was enough to start understanding. Ashari children needed specific minerals in their diet. They needed temperatures between 10 and 15 degrees to be comfortable. They were sensitive to loud noises and bright lights. They communicated through subtle gestures as much as through words. And most importantly, they bonded slowly. Trust was not given freely in Ashari culture. It was earned through patience and consistency. "You cannot rush her," Sora explained. "You must let her come to you, show her every day that you are safe. Eventually, she will believe it." Tiho took her advice. He stopped trying to approach Vela directly. Instead, he simply existed in the same space as her. He would read books quietly in his chair. He would cook meals and leave them for her. He would speak softly about ordinary things, never expecting a response. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. Slowly, almost invisibly, things began to change. Vela stopped hiding under the bed. She started sleeping on top of it instead, though she kept herself pressed against the wall. She stopped flinching every time Tiho moved. Her eyes still followed him everywhere, but the fear in them was fading, replaced by something more like curiosity. One evening, Tiho found something strange. He had given Vela a small stuffed toy, a little bear that had belonged to his daughter. He thought she had ignored it, but now he found it hidden under her pillow, carefully wrapped in cloth to keep it safe. She had kept it, she had treasured it, she just had not wanted him to know. The breakthrough came on a cold night, 3 months after Vela had arrived. Tiho woke up to the sound of crying. It was soft, almost silent, the kind of crying that comes from someone who has learned that crying too loudly brings punishment. He found Vela sitting in the dark living room, tears streaming down her pale face. She was shaking badly, caught in the grip of some nightmare she could not escape. Tiho sat down on the floor, leaving a careful distance between them. He did not try to touch her. He did not try to talk too much. He just sat there, breathing slowly, being present. "Bad dream?" he asked gently. Vela looked at him with those tear-filled blue eyes. She nodded slightly. "I used to have bad dreams too," Tiho said softly. "After I lost my family, I would dream about them every night. Sometimes happy dreams, sometimes sad ones. The sad ones were the worst." Vela was listening. For the first time, she was really listening. "Do you want to know what helped me?" Tiho continued. "I learned that bad dreams are just the past trying to scare us, but the past is over. It cannot hurt us anymore. What matters is now. What matters is that you are safe." He did not know if she understood all his words, but he hoped she understood his voice, the warmth in it, the care. "You are safe now," he repeated. "You do not have to be strong, you do not have to hide. You are just a kid, and kids are allowed to cry, kids are allowed to be scared. That is okay." Silence filled the room. The stars glittered outside the window. Somewhere in the distance, a ship's engine hummed. And then Vela spoke. It was just one word. Her voice was rough from months of silence, barely more than a whisper, but it was clear. "Stay." Tiho felt tears prick at his own eyes. Such a simple word, such a huge meaning. "Always," he promised. "I will always stay." Something in Vela's expression shifted. The wall she had built around herself cracked just a little. She did not throw herself into his arms. She did not suddenly transform into a happy child. The damage was too deep for that. But she moved slightly closer, just a few inches, and she did not move away. It was enough. It was a start. The next morning, Tiho went to the station's administrative office. He filled out forms. He answered questions. He provided documents and references. When the officer asked him why he wanted to do this, he gave a simple answer. Because every child deserves a family. 1 week later, the adoption was approved. Vela was now officially his daughter. Her full name was registered as Vela Park, citizen of the Human Federation. Sara came over that evening with a small cake to celebrate. Vela would not eat in front of her, but she watched from her corner with something that looked almost like wonder. Nobody had ever celebrated anything for her before. Before she left, Sara pulled Tiho aside. "You did a good thing," she said. "Not everyone would take on this responsibility. Not everyone would care so much for a child who is not their blood." Tiho looked across the room at Vela, who was carefully examining the cake from a distance. "She is my blood now," he said simply. "Maybe not by birth, but by choice, and sometimes that is even stronger." That night something new happened. As Tiho said goodnight and turned off the lights, he heard Vela's small voice from the darkness. "Good night, Tiho." It was the first time she had said his name. It was the first time she had initiated any kind of conversation. Tiho smiled, even though she could not see it. "Good night, Vela." He walked to his own bed with a lighter heart than he had felt in years. The road ahead would still be long. There would be challenges and setbacks and difficult days. But for the first time since he lost his wife and daughter, Tiho felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. 5 years passed like water flowing through fingers. Sometimes slow, sometimes fast, but always moving forward. Vela was 11 years old now, at least by human counting. She had grown taller, reaching up to Tiho's shoulder. Her pale white skin had remained the same, as had her soft blue eyes, but everything else about her had changed. She laughed now. Real laughter, the kind that came from the belly and filled a room with warmth. She talked endlessly about her school projects, her friends, her favorite books. She had opinions about everything, from the food at the station cafeteria to the best way to repair a broken circuit board. Most importantly, she called Tiho Appa, the Korean word for father. She had learned it from watching old videos of Earth, and she had adopted it as her own. Every time she said it, Tiho felt his heart swell with love. She was not the frightened, silent creature who had arrived in his arms 5 years ago. She was a girl, his daughter. But not everyone saw her that way. Station Harmony was home to many different species. Most were kind enough. They smiled at Vela in the corridors and said hello, but some were not so welcoming. The human children at school did not know what to make of her. She looked strange to them, with her white skin and blue eyes and the gentle ridges along her temples. They did not understand why she preferred cold rooms or why she could not eat the same food as them. Some of them made fun of her. They called her Ghost Girl and Alien Freak. They whispered behind her back and laughed when she walked by. Vela pretended not to hear, but Tiho could see the pain in her eyes when she came home from school. He could see how she went straight to her room and closed the door. He could hear her crying softly when she thought he could not hear. It broke his heart. But the worst comments came from the few Ishari who lived on the station. Most of them were traders or diplomats passing through. They did not stay long, but whenever they saw Vela, their reactions were always the same. Disgust, pity, scorn. They would look at her pale skin and whisper to each other, "The cursed one, the discarded princess, the shame of the empire." Vela did not understand at first. She was too young when she was taken away to remember much about Ishari culture. She knew she was different, but she did not know why it mattered so much. Then one day, everything changed. A delegation of Ishari officials arrived at Station Harmony for a trade conference. They wore beautiful robes of purple and silver, and their dark skin glowed under the station lights. On their chests, they wore the crest of the imperial palace, a golden sun surrounded by 7 stars. Vela saw them from across the corridor. She stopped walking and stared at the crest. Something stirred in her memory, something old and buried deep. She had seen that crest before, in another life, in a place of cold rooms and colder hearts. That night she came to Tiho with questions. "Appa," she said, sitting down across from him at the dinner table. Her voice was careful, controlled. "Where did I come from, before you, before the station? Where was I born?" Tiho had known this day would come. He had prepared for it, practiced what he would say. But now that it was here, the words felt heavy in his mouth. He took a deep breath and looked at his daughter. She was not a little child anymore. She was growing up. She deserved the truth. "You were born on the Ishari homeworld," he began slowly. "In the imperial palace. Your mother was the empress." Vela's eyes widened. "The empress, I was a princess." "Yes." Tiho reached across the table and took her hands gently. "You were born to be royalty, but the Ishari have very strict ideas about beauty, about perfection, and you were born different." He explained everything. The obsidian eyes that Ishari considered beautiful, the dark skin that showed noble blood, the perfect symmetry that marked one as blessed by the gods. "You had none of these things," Tiho continued, his voice soft. "So your mother declared you unfit. She ordered a handmaiden to take you away and dispose of you. You were supposed to be left on a dead moon to die alone." Vela's face had gone completely still. She was barely breathing. "But the handmaiden could not do it," Tiho said. "She brought you to this station instead, to me, and I took you home." A long silence filled the room. Outside the window, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the pain of one small girl. "My mother wanted me to die," Vela whispered finally, "because I was ugly." Tiho squeezed her hands tighter. "Listen to me carefully, Vela. You were never ugly. You were never a mistake. You were a gift I did not know I needed." Tears spilled down Vela's cheeks. "But my own mother threw me away, like garbage, like I was nothing." "Then your mother was wrong," Tiho said firmly. "She looked at you and saw only what she expected to see. She saw imperfection because she was looking for imperfection. But I looked at you and saw a scared little girl who needed love. That is all I have ever seen." Vela was crying freely now. years of hidden pain pouring out all at once. Tiho moved around the table and pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest and sobbed. "Why?" she asked between tears. "Why did you take me? You did not know me. I was not your child. Why did you care?" Tiho held her tightly, remembering the night 5 years ago when a trembling child had gripped his sleeve, remembering the emptiness in his heart and the strange feeling that fate had brought them together. "Because love is not about blood," he said gently. "Love is about choice. I chose you, Vela. I chose to be your father, and I have never regretted that choice for a single second." They stayed like that for a long time, father and daughter, holding onto each other while the universe spun around them. Eventually, Vela pulled back and wiped her eyes. She looked at Tiho with something new in her gaze. Not pain, not confusion, something stronger. "I do not want to be a princess," she said firmly. "I do not want to be a Shari. I do not want anything to do with people who would throw away a child because of how she looks." She took a deep breath and lifted her chin. "I want to be Vela Park, your daughter. That is all I want to be." Tiho smiled and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "That is all you need to be." But the universe had other plans. Unknown to them, word was spreading across the galaxy. Traders talked to diplomats. Diplomats whispered to officials. Officials sent messages to the imperial palace. The discarded princess was alive. She was living on a human station, and she was thriving. In the cold halls of the Ashari homeworld, someone was listening. Someone who saw opportunity in the news of a lost princess. The past that Vela wanted to forget was about to come looking for her. But for now, on this quiet night, none of that mattered. What mattered was a father and daughter sitting together, looking at the stars, grateful for the strange chance that had brought them into each other's lives. "Appa," Vela said softly. "Yes. Thank you for choosing me." Tiho pulled her close again. "Thank you for letting me." Outside, the stars continued to shine, and somewhere among them, a storm was gathering. The Ashari warship arrived without warning. It was massive, easily 5 times the size of any other vessel docked at Station Harmony. Its hull was painted in royal purple and silver, and the golden crest of the imperial palace gleamed on its side. Weapons bristled from every surface, a silent reminder of the power it represented. Tiho heard the news from Sora, who came running to his apartment with fear in her eyes. "They are here for her," Sora said breathlessly. "The Ashari. They are demanding to see the station council. They are demanding to see Vela." Tiho's blood ran cold. He looked at Vela, who was sitting at the table doing her homework. She had heard everything. Her face had gone pale, which for an Ashari meant almost translucent. "Appa," she whispered. Tiho forced himself to stay calm. "Stay here with Sora. I will handle this." He walked to the council chamber with heavy feet. His heart was pounding, but his face showed nothing. He had learned long ago that showing fear only made things worse. The council chamber was full when he arrived. Station officials sat around the long table, their faces tense, and at the head of the room stood 3 Ashari in magnificent robes. The leader was a tall male with skin like polished copper and eyes like black diamonds. He wore more gold than the others, and he carried himself with the arrogance of someone who had never been told no. "I am High Consort Idris," the male announced. "Brother of the Empress Nevia, uncle to the Princess Vela. I have come to collect what belongs to the Empire." The station director, an older woman named Jung, spoke carefully. "High Consort, we were not aware that the child had any connection to your empire. She was legally adopted by a human citizen under our laws." Idris waved his hand dismissively. "Your laws mean nothing. The child is of royal blood. She belongs to the Ashari Empire." "With respect," Director Jung replied, "the child was abandoned, left to die. Our records show that she was explicitly rejected by the Empress." Idris's expression flickered with annoyance. Circumstances have changed. The Empress is unwell. There are no other heirs. The princess must return to take her place in the line of succession. Tiho stepped forward. Every eye in the room turned to him. I am Vela's father, he said clearly. I adopted her 5 years ago. I have raised her, cared for her, and loved her. She is my daughter, not your political tool. Idris looked at him with open contempt. You are a human. You have no claim to an Ashari princess. I have every claim, Tiho replied calmly. I was there when your empire threw her away. I was there when she cried every night from nightmares. I was there when she spoke her first word in 3 months because she was so traumatized she had forgotten how to talk. He took another step forward, meeting Idris's cold eyes without flinching. Where were you? The chamber fell silent. The station officials watched with wide eyes. Even Idris seemed momentarily taken aback. But the High Consort recovered quickly. His lip curled into a sneer. Touching but irrelevant. The child is needed. The empire requires an heir. Personal feelings do not matter in affairs of state. They matter to me, Tiho said, and they matter to Vela. Idris turned to Director Jung. This is not a request. If the child is not surrendered, the Ashari Empire will consider it an act of hostility. We will take appropriate measures. The threat hung in the air like poison. Everyone knew what appropriate measures meant. The Ashari had a powerful military. Station Harmony had none. Director Jung looked troubled. We need time to consider this matter. Surely there can be some kind of negotiation. There will be no negotiation, Idris said coldly. You have 1 day to deliver the princess. After that, we will take her ourselves. He turned and swept out of the chamber, his attendants following behind him. Tiho stood frozen. 1 day. He had 1 day to protect his daughter from an empire that wanted to use her like a chess piece. He returned home to find Vela waiting by the door. Her blue eyes were wide with fear. I heard, she said quietly, they want to take me back. Tiho knelt down and took her hands. I will not let them. I promise you, Vela, I will not let anyone take you from me. But Vela shook her head. Appa, they have ships, they have soldiers. What can you do against all of that? It was a fair question. Tiho had no army. He had no political power. He was just one man who worked at a refugee center. But he had something the Ashari did not understand. He had love, and love could make people do extraordinary things. I do not know yet, he admitted, but we will figure it out together. That night Tiho barely slept. He made calls to every contact he had. He reached out to human officials, to journalists, to anyone who might help. He documented everything, including Vela's story, her adoption papers, her life on the station. If the Ashari wanted to take his daughter, the whole galaxy would know what kind of people they were. Morning came too quickly. A message arrived summoning Tiho and Vela to the council chamber. The final decision would be made. Tiho held Vela's hand as they walked through the station corridors. He could feel her trembling, but she held her head high. She was brave. She was so incredibly brave. The chamber was packed. Station residents had come to watch, having heard rumors about the confrontation. Idris stood at the front, flanked by Ashari guards. Director Jung looked exhausted and conflicted. We have considered the matter, Director Jung began slowly. While we sympathize with Mr. Park's position, we cannot risk war with the Ashari Empire. The safety of everyone on this station must come first. Therefore, we have decided. She hesitated, unable to finish. And then Vela spoke. May I say something? Everyone turned to look at the pale girl with blue eyes. Idris looked at her with barely concealed disgust, but Director Jung nodded. Go ahead, child. Vela let go of her father's hand and stepped forward. She was small compared to the Ashari adults, but her voice was strong and clear. She spoke in perfect Ashari, the language she had been learning in secret for years, wanting to understand where she came from. Every word was precise. Every sound was correct. "You called me ugly," she said to Idris. "You called me cursed. My own mother looked at me and saw nothing worth keeping. She ordered me thrown away like garbage." Idris's expression hardened. "You forget your place, child." "No," Vela replied. "I know exactly where my place is. It is here, with my father, with the man who looked at me and saw something worth loving." She gestured to Tiho, who was watching with tears in his eyes. "He did not care about my skin color. He did not care about my eyes. He did not care that I was different. He only saw a scared little girl who needed a home, and he gave me one." She turned to face the crowd. Humans and aliens alike were watching with rapt attention. "I am Vela Park, not Princess Vela of the Ishari Empire. I gave up that title the moment your empire gave up on me. You cannot reclaim me now just because it is convenient for your politics." Idris took an angry step forward. "You ungrateful." "I am not ungrateful," Vela interrupted. "I am honest. The Ishari abandoned me because I did not fit your definition of beauty, but my father taught me something different. He taught me that beauty is not about how you look. It is about how you treat others." She pointed directly at Idris. "And by that measure you are the ugly ones, not me." The chamber erupted in murmurs. The station residents nodded in agreement. Even Director Jung looked moved. Tiho stepped forward and placed his hand on Vela's shoulder. "Among humans," he said, addressing the room, "we have a saying, family is not about blood, it is about who stays. I stayed for Vela. I will always stay for Vela. Where were the Ishari when she needed them?" He looked directly at Idris. "You come here with your ships and your threats. You demand we give you a child you threw away. But she is not yours to take. She stopped being yours the moment you chose to abandon her." Idris's face was red with rage. "This is outrageous. The Empress will hear of this insult." "Good," Tiho said calmly. "Let her hear. Let the whole galaxy hear how the Ishari Empire treats children. Let everyone know what kind of people you really are." Director Jung stood up. "The Council has changed its decision. Vela Park is a citizen of this station under human protection. She will not be surrendered." Idris looked like he wanted to explode, but he also saw the crowd of people watching him. He saw the recording devices held by journalists. He saw that any violent action would be broadcast across the galaxy. "This is not over," he hissed. "The Empire will not forget this insult." He turned and stormed out of the chamber. His guards followed close behind. For a moment there was silence. Then someone started clapping, then another person, then another. Soon the whole chamber was applauding. Vela looked at her father with tears of relief streaming down her face. "We did it, Appa." Tiho pulled her into a tight hug. "You did it," he said. "You were so brave, so incredibly brave." She hugged him back just as tightly. "I learned from the best." 10 years had passed since the day Vela stood before the Ishari delegation and claimed her own destiny. She was a young woman now, 21 years old by human counting, though the Ishari would measure her age differently. Her pale white skin still glowed like moonlight, and her blue eyes still shone with gentle light. The ridges along her temples had become more defined with age, giving her face an elegant, unique beauty. She worked at the same refugee center where her father had found her so many years ago. But now she was not a frightened child hiding in corners. She was a cultural liaison, helping displaced alien children find homes with human families. Her story had spread across the galaxy. The pale princess who was thrown away by her own people and raised by a human widower. The girl who stood before an empire and said no. Many people called her an inspiration. Others called her a symbol of hope. Vela just called herself lucky. Her office was small but filled with life. Pictures covered the walls, showing dozens of children she had helped over the years. A green-skinned boy from the outer colonies, now living happily with a human couple on Earth. Twin sisters with silver hair, adopted by a retired ship captain. A boy with 4 arms who had been terrified of everyone until Vela taught him to trust again. Each picture was a victory. Each child was proof that love could cross any boundary. Tiho was 53 years old now. His hair had turned gray at the temples, and lines had formed around his eyes. But he was still strong, still kind, still the same man who had taken in a scared little girl on a quiet night so many years ago. He still lived on Station Harmony, though he had retired from the refugee center. Most of his days were spent reading, cooking, and waiting for Vela to come home from work so they could eat dinner together. Some things never changed. One evening, a message arrived at Vela's office. It bore the seal of the Ashari Imperial Palace. Vela stared at it for a long time before opening it. The Empress Nevia was dying. She had fallen ill years ago, and her condition had slowly worsened. The doctors said she had only days left, and she had made one final request. She wanted to see her daughter. Vela brought the message home to Tiho. They sat together at the kitchen table, the same table where she had cried after learning the truth about her origins. "You do not have to go," Tiho said gently. "You owe that woman nothing." Vela nodded slowly. "I know, but I think I need to go anyway, not for her, for me, to close this chapter of my life." Tiho studied her face. She was not the scared child anymore. She was a grown woman who had faced her demons and won. If she felt this was something she needed to do, he would support her. "Then I will go with you," he said simply. Vela smiled and took his hand. "I was hoping you would say that." The journey to the Ashari homeworld took 3 days. Their ship was small compared to the massive vessels of the Empire, but it was enough to carry them across the stars. When they arrived, Vela saw her birth planet for the first time since she was an infant. It was a world of dark purple oceans and silver mountains. The sky was a deep shade of violet, lit by twin suns that never fully set. It was beautiful, and it felt completely foreign. They were escorted to the imperial palace by guards in ceremonial armor. The halls were vast and cold, decorated with statues of ancient rulers and paintings of glorious battles. Everything was designed to make visitors feel small and unimportant. Vela felt neither. She walked with her head high, her father beside her. She belonged nowhere she was not wanted, and she wanted to be here at least for now. The Empress's chamber was at the heart of the palace. The doors were massive, carved from black stone and inlaid with gold. When they opened, Vela stepped through into another world. Nevia lay on a bed in the center of the room. She was old now, older than Vela had imagined. Her copper skin had faded to a dull bronze, and her once perfect features were thin and worn. Her black eyes, once cold and calculating, now looked tired and sad. She was alone, except for a few attendants who stood silently in the corners. Vela approached the bed slowly. She had imagined this moment many times over the years, sometimes with anger, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with a strange kind of longing for answers. Now that she was here, she felt surprisingly calm. "Vela," the Empress's voice was weak but clear. "You came." "I came," Vela agreed. Nevia's eyes moved over her daughter's face, taking in every detail. The pale skin, the blue eyes, the gentle ridges, all the things that had once been called ugly and cursed. "You have grown," the Empress said softly. "You look different than I expected." "Different good or different bad?" Vela asked. Nevia was silent for a moment. "Just different. Not what I imagined when they told me you were alive and thriving." Tiho stood back, letting Vela have this moment, but he was close enough to step in if needed. He would always be close enough. "Why did you want to see me?" Vela asked. "After all these years, after everything that happened, why now?" The Empress closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, there were tears forming. Actual tears. The first she had ever shed in her life. I have had many years to think about what I did, Nevia said slowly. Years of watching the empire decline without an heir. Years of hearing stories about a princess who grew up among humans and became better than any of us could have made her. She reached out a trembling hand toward Vela, though she did not quite touch her. I made a terrible mistake, the greatest mistake of my life. I looked at you and saw only what you lacked. I never stopped to see what you had. Vela felt something shift inside her chest, not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but something softer than anger. "Do you hate me?" the Empress asked. It was the question Vela had asked herself for years. Did she hate the woman who had thrown her away? Did she hate the mother who had chosen pride over love? "No," Vela said finally, "I do not hate you." Nevia looked surprised. "How can you not, after what I did?" Vela glanced back at Tiho, who smiled encouragingly. "You gave me away," Vela continued. "You threw me into the darkness and expected me to disappear. But in doing so, you gave me to someone who taught me what love really is. You gave me a father who saw me as precious when you saw me as broken." She turned back to the Empress. "I do not hate you because your cruelty led me to kindness. Your rejection led me to acceptance. If you had kept me, I would have grown up cold and empty like everyone else in this palace. Instead, I grew up with warmth, with laughter, with a father who held my hand through every nightmare and celebrated every small victory." She paused, letting her words sink in. "For that I thank you." The Empress wept openly now. Tears streamed down her hollow cheeks, the first genuine emotion she had shown in decades. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am so sorry." Vela stood silently, watching her biological mother cry. She did not offer comfort. She did not move closer. Some wounds could not be healed with words alone. But she did not leave either. After a long while, the Empress's tears slowed. She looked up at Vela with something like peace in her eyes. "You are everything I could not be," Nevia said softly. "Strong, compassionate, whole. The humans made you into something wonderful, something I could never have created." She looked past Vela to Tiho, who still stood quietly by the door. "Take care of her," the Empress said to him, "as you always have." Tiho nodded once, "Always." 3 days later, Empress Nevia passed away. Vela did not attend the funeral. She had said her goodbyes. She had found her closure. There was nothing more for her on that world of cold halls and colder hearts. She returned to Station Harmony with her father. They sat together on the observation deck, watching the stars spin slowly past. It was their favorite spot, the place where they had shared so many conversations over the years. "Are you okay?" Tiho asked. Vela considered the question. "I think so. It feels strange, like a door has finally closed." "Good strange or bad strange?" She smiled. "Good strange, like I can finally stop wondering what might have been. I know now, and I know that what I have is better." Tiho put his arm around her shoulders. "I am proud of you, you know that, right?" Vela leaned her head against his shoulder, just as she had done when she was a little girl. "I know, Appa, I know." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the endless dance of stars. Father and daughter, human and Ishari, two people who had found each other in the darkness and built something beautiful together. The galaxy was vast and filled with countless wonders. Ancient empires rose and fell. Great fleets crossed the void. Species evolved and changed over millions of years. But none of that compared to the simple miracle of love. A love that saw beauty where others saw flaws. A love that chose to stay when everyone else left. A love that proved, again and again, that family was not about blood or species or the circumstances of birth. Family was about who stayed. And Tiho had stayed. From the first night when he took a trembling child into his arms, to this quiet evening watching the stars. He had stayed through the tears and the fears and the difficult days. He would always stay. Because that was what fathers did. And Vela, The pale princess who was thrown away by an empire but caught by a human heart, had learned the most important lesson of all. Beauty was not about how you looked. Beauty was about how you loved. And by that measure, she was the most beautiful person in the galaxy.